Because while I think there will be a lot of interesting things to talk about in this class, we'll understand that doesn't mean there are a lot of happy things to talk about in this class, because, of course, this is the period leading up to World War II. And yet, as Frank so ably pointed out, with a certain number of buffoons and other characters, we will have opportunities, I hope, to make some humor out of a period which was, in many ways, one of the most difficult times in modern history. And you'll notice how I'm doing this, basically setting us up one topic for every 2 times. And so if you're ever thinking, oh, well, heck, I can just miss one class. What's one class? You see, that's the beginning of wicked thinking, okay? You just think, oh, I can miss once and it won't matter. But then what'll happen the next time? It can become addictive. So stay away from class missing, okay? You'll have breaks. You'll be allowed 1 break per period, okay? I'm strict on that in enforcing that rule. You're allowed a 4-minute, is that right? 4 minutes, 4.5. If you really are attentive and well-behaved, you'll get up to 4.5. But yeah, we don't miss a lot of time, and let's get to it, because we are talking early 30s now. Think after the Depression, well, after the beginning of the Depression, 1929 to 1930, and we pick it up with the map that you see before me, and I hope that map will show you, starting, let's go on over to the USSR. Back in the USSR, as the song used to sing, we see it's big, it's mean, and scary. And I imagine there were lots of those who felt that way. This, of course, being the home of the Comintern, the Communist International, and everybody who's a communist says, you know, we just love you and we wish we could be in Moscow. Moscow's. Basically, then, we understand that if you're looking for a big badge out in the 1930s, I imagine the Soviet Union serves that purpose nicely. So I thought I'd start east and go west for us. And you say, well, they're right next to their Polish friends. Not so much. I would like to tell you the Soviets and the Poles had a love affair, but that would be a lie. They do not like each other. In fact, I think it's fair to say that Polish-Soviet problems are considerable. And you would think, but after World War II, maybe they wanted, after World War I, maybe they wanted to give peace a chance. Not so much. This is a rather constant part of the 1920s, because I really think the Soviets resent Poland existing, okay? I know, it's heartache, it's just heartbreaking, but you know, the Soviets taking the Russian claims feel like this is our land and we just really resent the Poles. Continuing our move westward, there's Germany. And we really see problems there, because you see Poland, and you see that jutting, and don't forget Danzig, because the Germans certainly did. They thought about it a lot. And when they thought about it, it was a feeling of hurt and a feeling of desire. We want it and we hate you. And so, even though, strictly speaking, Danzig was not controlled by the Poles, it was controlled by a special League of Nations commission. So, but you see that area, and it was called a Polish corridor. And boy, there were lots of Germans lived there. And we all know we have ethnic problems today, and they had ethnic problems then. Those German-Polish ethnic issues were very serious in this period. And the existence of Danzig was always a point of contention between Poles and Germans. So you think the Poles have to worry about the Soviet Union, but then you can just turn over and worry about the Germans. It's a constant for Poland. Now let's go south. You say, well, there we'll find someone who loves us. Not really, because there we have Czechoslovakia. And you say, that's a lovely country. Well, it is if you're a Czech, but how about if you are a German ethnic in Czechoslovakia? You're not really that happy. And there are lots of them in Western Czechoslovakia. Well, let's go east and maybe we can find some happy people. No, those are called Slovaks. Well, they made it in the name, okay, but that's about it. It's essentially, no offense to Czechs, but it is Czech, more or less controlled. And the Slovaks feel very resentful of that fact. And there is land there in Czechoslovakia. You say, well, so you mean there's land that people feel that Czechoslovakia shouldn't have? All around. Let's go south of Czechoslovakia. There's a country we love, goulash. 1956, yes. There we go, Hungary. Yes, there was land that the Hungarians lost to the Czechs. There is land that the Poles lost to the Czechs. And you say, you know that old expression, let bygones be bygones? No, 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 no. You think all this is going on when folks can barely get enough to eat? Yeah, we think about these lands and these ethnic areas. I'm just doing this as a preview of coming attractions because there's going to be all of this. I'm just going from place to place. It's unbelievable to me how many areas of discontent there are. Okay, so Hungary's got its issues. Oh, and if they don't like the Czechs, who else don't they like? Oh, let me count the countries. We don't like the Romanians. Oh, we can't stand the Romanians. Why don't we like the Romanians? Well, shoot, after World War I, all these people were grabbing Hungarian lands because Hungary's a loser. And you know what happens to losers? They get land taken away. So there are big Hungarian populations in Romania, and there are Hungarian populations in Czechoslovakia. And you think any of them are going to say, we just want to work with all of you all and take civics class together, give me a hug, you know, that kind of thing. No, 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 no. There's always that, why can't we take Hungarian 101 in class? Why do we have to learn that yucky Romanian? You know, that kind of... So on and on it goes. So then we come down to the land of Il Duce. And who doesn't love the Italians? Well, there are many people. Mussolini may have had his admirers. Some people saying, well, the Italians need someone like Mussolini. We wouldn't want him, but they need him because he gets them organized, he gets them more together. As far as the lands are concerned, however, he is, that is Mussolini, concerned about Germany. Why would he be concerned about Germany? Well, there you see it in beautiful orange. Austria. You say, well, what does Italy care about Austria? Well, Austria's a neighbor, and the Germans lust, if I may use that word, they lust after Austria. And we'll see about that as it will develop. Meanwhile, in northern Italy, we will find a remarkable number of people whose first language is not Italian. Yeah? You mean they're speaking German? Uh-huh. Gosh, I wonder how that happened. Again, win a war, lose a war, okay? Austria-Hungary, I believe, lost World War I. And guess who was there going, give us part, give us some? Italy. They were real hungry. I don't know how much they had earned, but they were hungry. So they got a nice area, and some of you have been there, the Tyrol area of northern Italy. And so, yeah, you've got issues there between Italians and Germans. And dare I just call them Austrians, because Austria is a legitimate country. Now let's go to France and Germany. And you see what is called on that map DMZ. I love that. Reminds me of Vietnam, doesn't it? The demilitarized zone. Because that is the area that, according to the World War I arrangements, the Rhineland, remember this map is supposed to be in the early 30s, to a time before the Germans were on the move. So the area is going to be separated from the main thrust of German military power. So the French, the Belgians feel that they are somewhat secure. And the British, for their part, are glad of it because they don't want to be bothered. You say, but don't they love the French? I thought they were allies. It's a love-hate thing, okay? Yeah, and at this time, I think it's fair to say the British probably have enough issues of their own. And you see it there, the Irish Free State. Now, if you were to go to Ireland today and ask, well, don't do it. Go to Ireland, I mean, have nice trips, but don't even bother to ask them about the Irish Free State. They'll go, what are you, daft? What are you talking about? This was a stage that the British set up thinking they could somehow persuade the Irish to accept a Dominion status. And I can assure those of you who are descended from the Irish, if you ask your ancestors, they would go and go, heck no. But this is the stage at which they had arrived. It's not going to last, this Irish Free State, believe me. While the British will cling to that little part of the north, the Irish Free State, which was a dominion, a la Canada, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, at this stage, the British say, whew, we're glad we got that much done. But believe me, it ain't going to last because you know what the Irish want? Freedom. And they're going to get it. Because this has been, as the Brits would say, a bloody mess. And it has been unpleasant for all concerned. And that is not meaning in any way that all the problems are solved. It simply means that it is a reality of Britain's existence. Many of you know that during World War I, there was a major Irish revolt against the British, which means, gosh, maybe we better wait until after we defeat the Germans. No, we'll do it now. So it's a very, very difficult situation. Now, I do want to go south across the Pyrenees momentarily to note that Spain awaits us during this term. There will be lots of discussions of Spain because, like many parts of Europe at this time, there are extremists on both sides that want Spain to go this way or that way. And of course, that's going to mean some serious, serious difficulties. And finally, across the majestic Atlantic Ocean lies the US of A. Yes, I just got that little tantalizing bit of United States to give you that sense of, can't you help? Can't you join our struggle for peace? Give peace a chance. And we go, nah, not really. We've got enough troubles of our own. Thank you very much, though, for the offer. Yeah, as you know, in comparison with the international role that the United States has played in the second half of the 20th century, the first half was an effort to avoid as much as we could of the entanglements of European issues. And of course, that did not make the Europeans happy, because up to a point they wanted that involvement. I mentioned extremes, and of course the key word of the interwar period is fascism. Fascism as an ideology, I suppose, evolved in the 19th century. I don't know if I would date it any more before that. It is somewhat romantic in some of the works I've read. We combine nationalism with a strong man who leads his people against all the various enemies and preserves that people over all others, many of whom want to lead those people astray into what is not good for them. And this savior, leader, strong man will bring them security, power. You know, they would even, in one I think it was written by an Italian, talk about riding a motorcycle as a symbol of masculine power, as a symbol of authority. But in this time of depression and a kind of revolt against the old ideas and the fear of communism, these new ideas of the strong, sort of anointed leader who would rise above all groups. Now, this is ultranationalism. You know, sometimes we say, well, fascism and communism. Well, there's a big difference there. Because somebody asked me once, said, could you have like an international association of fascists? I don't think that would work out. They tend to, you know, I mean, a communist, come here, you big red brother, I just love you to death. I mean, the communists, now that's different. Because we're supposed to love each other, you know, workers of the world unite. You're a Pole, you're a Czech, you're Irish. I could just love you all. But fascism's a little different, because the fascist sees that individual group as superior, individual. If you're not one of us, you know, we can smile and shake hands, but no hugs, okay? So we understand then that the fascists are individualistic, nationalistic, and they don't like any of the old traditions. That's a mistake people often make. You think sometimes of fascists, and you think of Mussolini making nice with the King of Italy. Well, they didn't like each other at all. He just had to deal with him. Couldn't get rid of him. So the Italian king survived Mussolini. But in the theory of fascism in Italy, if there had been no king, that would have been fine with Mussolini, because he didn't really fit into Mussolini's plans. But you think kings and queens and dukes and all of that, yuck, kick it all out. Because basically it's the Mussolinis now, Il Duce. And so it's very, very interesting. This is supposed to be the new way of the 20th century. You say, well, how do you feel about pinkos, socialists, or reds? Well, you are the enemy, and we will defeat you. And when you get a case like Italy after World War I, it is ripe for Mussolini, an anti-communist movement. Fascists would say of liberals and parliamentarians, all they'll do is want to go to some sort of parliament and vote and talk, but not fascists. We do something. Or as we would say today maybe, activists. Yeah, they're activists all right. So, we're first going to talk about non-fascist strongmen. There's an interesting set of those because sometimes we confuse, and I hear people say this. I mean, out in the world, where I don't want to correct people, you know, it sounds pedantable. You know, I don't want to go, uh-oh, I don't really think he was a fascist. You know, it's a social thing, you know, just, you know, at a Super Bowl party, so, they're there having some Fritos, and they say something about a fascist. Say, no, that really wasn't a fascist. Let them say it in ignorance. Let it go, let it go. Talk about bliss, ignorance. Yeah, let it go. So, there are debates about how fascism is caused, but definitely it's a strongly interwar phenomenon. But there were other dictators. In fact, there were lots of them. Here is one you don't hear very often. I know. You want to impress your guests at the party? Yeah, bring out Primo and say, bet you didn't know about him. I hope you get brownie points for that. People go, wow, she's really educated. Primo de Rivera, notice his dates, 1923 to his death in 1930. The Spanish monarchy had fallen, and so old Primo, a military man, was able to take power. Not everybody was for him. Let me definitely emphasize that he didn't come with 100% support, but he had the ones that counted at this time, meaning the Catholic Church and the Spanish upper classes, and they thought he was great. And, you know, ole primo. So he takes power. He maintains a regime that is not exactly conducive to what we would call the civil rights of ordinary Spanish people. I think that's fair to say. He will not be getting any awards from the Spanish Civil Liberties Union, but the church loves him, and the upper classes love him, and yet that element of people that I would call liberal, socialist, communist, they don't go away, they just unhappy. But they figure time will bring about change, and it did after his death in 1930. So people want a difference. Some want a dictator, and some want a socialist or communist government. No one seems to want anything in the middle. So Primo has his support and his opposition. But as to fascism or any of those doctrines, he's just a good old traditional dictator.
Did he lead up to Franco?
Oh, she said the F word. I was waiting for Jeff. Yes. I carefully avoided Francisco, but he's coming to a classroom near you. And very soon, I'm keeping Franco, but we'll let him out. Yeah, he's gonna play a big role. The Spanish Civil War is gonna get a whole lecture, so yes, indeed. But there is a period of the liberal socialist Spanish Republic before Franco, after, well, 1930 to 1936, I'll say, before Franco comes in. Do you know, I didn't ever meet this man, but when I was a student, I was actually in his country. That's right, we're the same age. The year before he died, I was over there, you know, with the student group. And Salazar died. And now that's a long time to be the strong man. Look at that, 32 to 68.
Did you enjoy the Madeira?
Yes, so wonderful. And they used to say, I mean, you know, we don't have, you know, I was in Lisbon and they would say, well, we don't have any beggars or street people in Lisbon, because Dr. Salazar wouldn't allow it. He had a PhD in economics. Not saying anything, economics is a wonderful field, an interesting field. But he was an individual who believed in a sort of doctrine of corporatism, and so that must be how he lasted. He was not a fascist. They were allied to Great Britain. They became an early member of NATO in 1949, for goodness sakes. There's everything, in other words, to say that Salazar knew what to do to stay in, because he stayed in. And the whole regime he created did not die, I think, until 74. So it lasted a few years after him. So he is one of your successful strongmen. Now, you're not going to ask me, I guess, was he a Lutheran or Presbyterian? No, no. He is a serious Catholic. I mean, we're talking daily Mass, okay? And no Vatican II, thank you very much. We are into the great traditions of the church. But it was very interesting to go to Portugal at that last gasp of the old Portugal, because things would certainly change, as you can imagine. Oh, my Lord, Marshal Pilsudski. Now, what can I say? Well, we associate Poland, and this is the new and improved Poland. This is the post-World War I Poland, in case you're counting up the old Polands and the new Polands. This is one of the major figures. He is associated with the recreation of Poland. You notice he died in 1935. He had been involved in the war, the Great War, and it was sort of natural that he should become a leader. What I want you to know about him is the fact that he was able, with his influence, to allow other political parties, and I don't know if, you know, the Polish Daily Express, if somebody come out in Warsaw World and said, we don't like him or anything like that, I think that'd be a little outrageous. But there was a degree of freedom that Pilsudski's authority was fairly strong, but without what we would consider to be essential for a liberal parliamentary democracy. Poland didn't have that. And Pilsudski was a pretty powerful man. You'll see there he is, young, fairly young, and very much a symbol of Polish pride. Oh boy, Admiral Horthy, boy, he got a lot of medals, didn't he? Now here's something. What do you do in 1919 when you've been an admiral in the Austro-Hungarian Navy? You gonna wait on that pension? Think that pension's gonna come in for you? I don't think so.
Sound of Music. No, that was Kevin.
What's that?
The guy in the Sound of Music.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is, Admiral Horthy basically became, since they couldn't have the Habsburg ruler of old, you know, the traditional Habsburg ruler, he became the regent. They called him regent. It's more like sort of king in waiting, if you will. King that was never going to be. Because the Allies would never put up with letting the Hungarians have the Habsburgs come back. So Admiral Horthy, he ruled a pretty long time in Hungary. And of course, you know, he's always after whoever he can get because he wants to get some of that land back. God, we hate you, Romania. You Czechs are disgusting. You Poles are even more odious. I mean, it's like you're surrounded by these people. And how do you feel about the Soviet Union? Not good, okay? So we hate communism. And so he's going to run it. And ultimately, he's brought down because clearly he picked the wrong side in World War II. You'll notice the year that he ended. Not death, but exile. He will be tried for collaborating with transporting Hungarian Jews, but ultimately he will end up living out his long life in, of all places, Portugal. I went to an area, and I'll never forget, the tour guide said to me, he said, "This is the area of former kings. This is where they hang out." And I said, wow, now I've got to start graduate school and get a job. Darn, it would be nice to do that because it was just beautiful. And I was saying, yeah, but I guess you have to have a lot of money. And I'm thinking Admiral Horthy probably had money from somewhere. Maybe he'd taken it from Hungary. But he was never allowed to go back, and he died then in exile. But again, I don't think he exactly went to the people and said, "Horthy for regent," yeah, kissing babies or passing out sweets or something. No. But he was a beloved figure, as far as I'm aware. Yes, Sir Oswald. People, you will recognize Sir Oswald Mosley. Because I want you to be aware of these would-be, wannabe fascist rulers. You think about what would you like to be, Sir Oswald. Sir Oswald Mosley, he was an interesting character. Married at one point to the daughter of Lord Curzon, famous Viceroy of India, who was involved after World War I with the Curzon line between Germany and Poland. So it was a very prominent family. And when that marriage ended, he married one of the Mitford daughters, as in Jessica and Diana. So Sir Oswald Mosley had lots of female companionship. And he had lots of political evolution. Early in his life, he was a Tory. Yes, and then he went to the Labour Party. You say, well, boy, that's a transformation. You bet it is. particularly because that's not the end. Ultimately, he will lead, direct this fascist party. Whether he legitimately thought he could make himself Duce of Great Britain, I've often wondered about. But he and his wife would pay for it by confinement during World War II. That means be put in the big house, to put it in the crude language, but because they were considered traitors. As you can see, he was playing the role of fascist. You know, if you've ever seen any, you can see it at YouTube if you want to, you know. These people who, they even had American people who were like this. They would have the groups and make all the signs, and I guess at Army surplus they could get little outfits and they could march around and look real mean. And I think a lot of the Brits found them to be rather, not humorous, contemptible maybe. But there were movements of this sort. And let's never, we certainly would never forget our friends in the Third Republic. No, that would be hurtful. And we would always remember the French had their fascists, believe me, and they were also very active, but not as in Germany or Italy, certainly. Now, you got plenty of people who are going to support you, people who don't want to be communists.
Same thing as Heil Hitler, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think partially they're aping fascists or Nazis in terms of those symbols. You got the great man, you got uniforms, you got that whole cult thing, and they always say they're young, unemployed. I mean, this is the Depression, folks. I mean, and this gives you something to do, extracurricular activities, avocation, you know. Some of us, you know, joined the high wire or some other club and got active, 4-H, I don't know. But we weren't becoming fascists. Rum. And I mean, we didn't want to be scary. I guess nowadays, people, they would go to a tattoo parlor. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't get out much, but I'm just saying that in that day and age, you can imagine, I don't think they would have been to tea at the Mosley House. Now, that's just my opinion. I can't imagine Sir Oswald having these people over. More crumpets? I don't think so. But the Mosleys were definitely, I'd say, lower upper class. And so they weren't going anywhere. Here's another fascist. Yes, we are getting ready for Franco. I'm just warming you up now. Okay, so don't get too excited yet. I just put the broiler on. Okay, so we got some minutes. This man died when he was 33 years old. I looked it up. He was young, and we've already seen his daddy. This son of his was an attorney, young lawyer, very prominent figure, and he was not satisfied with the ideas of his father, the original Primo. This is Antonio Primo. And Antonio Primo, not without criticizing Daddy, of course, basically says, there's more that I can give you. And he founded what was called the Phalange, a movement that the Spanish Republic, left wing, did not like. And so he was executed in 1936. What you're looking at is sort of like Phalangist icon. If you want to say, we love you, Antonio, that sort of thing. You know, he became, actually, Franco had a problem with these people. We understand then that I guess it's sort of useful if you were thinking, I mean, if you came in and you said, I'm troubled, Generalissimo Franco. I mean, I respect and admire you, but I still think a lot about Antonio. And you would go in peace, my troubled child. You can love us both and still be a good citizen of France. And so, yeah, of Spain. Franco's Spain, I'm sorry. But the idea is that he would be able to use phalangists, that is Franco. Franco was not a phalangist himself. The phalange movement was founded by a man who died long before World War II, right? 1936. But it is an important movement. And when Franco's movement starts along, don't you think there's going to be people, you know, when you go to your pep rally, and don't you think, what do you think about Antonio? Yeah. And then get them, yeah. See, you could be like a cheerleader and get out there. But he and Franco were not like, Francisco, Antonio, you know, it wasn't like that. They weren't close. I find that very ironic. And in terms of what we may think of, if we think about Spanish fascism a lot, maybe we don't, because we understand that this is going to be part of the period in which the Spanish Republic will take power. And it will be the Spanish Republic's decision to do away with this fellow. And maybe that was a good idea. Maybe it was not. I guess, are we ready for take the break at this point?
Ready.
Okay, you know you're entitled to it. I want you to have it. Enjoy all of the time that you're permitted, which is very little. Let us, everyone seems to be back from the powder room. I'm going to start again now. So, make sure that you remember dear Antonio as, so that when we do get to Franco, that you will be aware he had his antecedents, and even though the connection was not necessarily personal, he did provide Franco with a strong basis of support, simply because if you are in any way conservative, fascist, whatever, and you bring up the subject of Spanish Republic, it's not good. Because the Spanish Republic is all about liberalism, socialism, communism, and the worst of worst. You say, you mean there's something worse than communism? Well, some of them would say anarchism. Yes, thank you. I mean, it's very popular in northern Spain. And anarchists can get, they get excited, and they could be quite troublesome. So if people talk about anarchism, you say, hey, you want to come to an anarchist party with me tonight? I would think it'd make sure they have a very nice recommendation, because I wouldn't be associated. This is an amusing picture to me. Amusing because many of us have had that first experience with somebody, maybe somebody we really admire from afar, and we get with them, and then our expectations are not met. And that was their first meeting. And you look at those faces. I should have worn a uniform. I should have worn those civilians. Look at his nice outfit. I think he was really down about that. They met in Venice, and you can imagine. I mean, Germany's so superior to Italy in the view of the Fuhrer, but he's also thinking, why does he keep showing off all this Venetian stuff? Doesn't he understand my country is much more wealthy and populous than his? There is no reason that they should have been friends. You say, well, maybe in 1922 when Mussolini first took over the Italian government, Hitler, coming out of World War I, might have said, wow, that's kind of nice. But remember, Italy and Germany were hardly allies. Italy had been one of the powers that defeated the Germans. And to ask a German to say, wow, you Italians are so cool, that's probably not going to happen. On the idea, however, that Mussolini was a strong man and followed a doctrine that seemed somewhat like the ideas that Hitler was working with, that is, the ideas that would become the National German Socialist Workers' Party, or Nazis, you could see there might have been some feelers, you know, sort of like, before we actually have a date, why don't we correspond? Could you imagine on some of these websites now? You say, I've heard a lot about you. I love that black uniform you wear and those boots and the way you can jump up and down. That's really neat. I mean, yes, I can see there would be something there. But you know, don't you know, well, you got this, well, we have that. And they go, yeah, there's a lot of that. So there's some hurt feelings on both sides. And then somebody, maybe they were having a little beer or wine, whatever, and somebody brought up the A word, Austria. Yeah, ooh. That can be very sensitive, very sensitive. Because as we know, Hitler thought a lot about Austria, and so did Mussolini. So they would watch it, and maybe they said, yeah, it's a beautiful country, love those Alps. So they move on. Why Venice? That's an interesting question. Glad you asked. Part of it had to do with the way that Mussolini wanted Hitler to travel. Because you know what? He didn't want him to go through the Tyrolean area. And you know why? Because people would be out there on the train tracks going, go Big G, we love Germany, you're a cool country, and all of that. Because these people are not really Italian. They need to take more Italian civics classes, don't they? Because they are German ethnics, but they are living in Italy. And it's funny that the train route was set up so that they couldn't have a demonstration saying, we love you, Germany, you know, that sort of thing, because that annoyed Mussolini. As you can imagine, he was not exactly a sort of like, well, we can all come together and love each other. It wasn't going to work out that way. So I just thought that was interesting to think about. This is the way it began. But sometimes it happens on the first date. You don't know. I mean, you know, some of you, you know, it can be wild passion. I mean, I've seen Hallmark. I know it happened. But it's just not something you can guarantee with these things. I thought, again, I talk about it so much, there is that, see that little old area right there? The Tyrol right there, and you see Venice. So he just took the train and scooted through that territory. Night train, by the way. So that there would not be any demonstrations, and scooted him on into Venice. So they met, and it is a difficult situation. Again, we went through the map, so you're already aware of the many areas of trouble that we are aware. But I thought since the Tyrolean area was there, and you are thinking, like I am, why on earth was it given to the Italians? Because they asked for it, and who's going to say no? I mean, they won, so to speak. I mean, they weren't a major asset. In fact, they were a lot of trouble. But, you know, I think Wilson and Clemenceau and Lloyd George had to listen to them fussing. So he said, whining. And they said, all right. So, there you are. Now, I showed you this before, but I thought I would show it again to anyone who was new, or maybe someone who missed this particular lecture. Because you look, gosh, they're all in civilian clothes. Where are all the uniforms? Well, that is the amazing thing to me that many of us don't understand when Hitler initiated his first government. There were only he and one other fellow who were part of his movement. The rest of them were simply conservatives who were allied with him, believing he would help clear Germany from the socialists, communists, and liberals. They were willing to work with him under the leadership of, well, von Hindenburg, the president of Germany, the great general, and his allies, and said, we'll use them and they'll be out by 1934. Well, that didn't happen. January 1933 then, I ask you particularly to note, because they will be important in terms of diplomacy, the man standing there, many of you of course will know the flying ace of World War I, Gary. But up there, standing there, will be von Neurath. He would be the original German foreign minister. And again, he might join the Nazi Party for advantages, but he's not one of the hardcore. You know, he's just doing this for whatever advantages will come to him. An individual that I would almost call flighty is seated next to the Fuhrer, apparently. He's talking to him, and his name was Franz von Papen. And he's quite, again, he just flutters around figuring what is going to work for him. He'll be ambassador to Austria for a bit. He'll be ambassador to Turkey during World War II. He'll have lots of things to do, and I think they call him in politics an intriguer. He's always somebody who's involved, and so he is not a Nazi, but of course he is part of the coalition that will be useful for Hitler. But again, I remind you, they're all in civilian clothes. This is the cabinet, and Hitler's the chancellor, and now they can work together until another cabinet is formed, but it doesn't happen. We know, of course, that events take place, to me at least, very quickly. And you can look at the events, and to me, by the end of the summer of 1934, I feel like Hitler's authority can't really be challenged to any great extent. It doesn't take a lot of time. If you think about the events that occurred, the famous fire burning down the parliamentary building that would be accused of various enemies of the German government, the act which allowed Hitler to act without parliamentary authority, and that was the Enabling Act. Hitler eliminating any Nazis or conservatives, and von Papen almost ended up that way. Several did, including a famous General Kurt von Schleicher, who had been chancellor, and he and his wife were shot down at their front door. So the Night of the Long Knives, which eliminated a lot of conservatives and a lot of people that, even Nazis, who had been considered troublemakers. And all of this was taking place that night, very busy night for the German Nazis, June 30th, 1934. All of this was going on while the president was in, I would say, a condition of decline. His decisions, I assume, were controlled by his son and other people around him, not necessarily Hitler personally. But it was out of von Hindenburg's control. And then finally, he died. I've had people ask me, do I think that von Hindenburg was assassinated? No, I think von Hindenburg simply just died. Yes. He had age on him, he had various health conditions, and so I guess after June 30th, Hitler could wait, because there would never be another von Hindenburg. Hitler would make sure of that by taking his title, President and Chancellor. That's that. By then, of course, we're ready to eliminate other political parties and make ourselves in a position to carry out all of the terrible things that we associate with this regime in the mid-1930s. Now, early on, Hitler did something that I don't know if it shocked other Germans or whether they approved of it, because Japan had already done it. So it's not like we can be the first to leave, but at least we can be second. But this was very important to Hitler, leaving the League of Nations. And you think, those of you who were here in the fall, I made a big to-do about how German leaders at that time, we're talking 1925, 1926, had tried so hard to get into the League of Nations. They want to be part of the group. And now they're ready to get out. And you're thinking, why do they want to get out? Well, clearly Hitler hardly wants to be part of some sort of international association. But secondly, I think it's because he could get some media attention by saying, you're all hypocrites. You want us to maintain a small military, but you Americans, you Brits, whatnot, you want to have a larger military, so what's up with that? So we'll just leave you, and we're not going to war. We want peace, but not in this kind of organization. We'll just wish you well and see you around. Again, Stresemann's dead, so there's nobody. I'm sure Hitler could have cared less about what Stresemann thought, but Stresemann, who worked so hard for German entrance into the League of Nations, he died in 1929. Not that I want to give you too many dates that will be on the file, but just so you won't forget, just a few. I'm giving them out very sparingly so that you understand, though, that that's all gone now. And nobody's going to say, you can't do that. You know, you're a member forever. No. I mean, you know, people leave, people come and go. I haven't seen, you know, I toured the UN. I wanted to show some family members that over Christmas. And I asked the guide, I shouldn't have, but I asked the guide, I said, could we discuss examples of entrances or exits from the United Nations? And I know, and he looked at me, that's not included in the price of your ticket. So, so I shut my mouth. I said, oh, well, I'll just look that up. But the truth is, the only time that I'm aware of an expulsion, some of you may remember in 1971, the Taiwanese as the Republic of China, and they were booted so that the People's Republic could join. And I thought that would have been an interesting point on the tour. But hey, I didn't ask for a refund. I said, you're too young to know about that. I'm sure with more training you can get this right. However, this is also important, I think, to understand that when we talk about the League of Nations, there were member states that were involved in wars in Latin America and elsewhere. But in the case of Europe, these people left voluntarily. First, the Japanese, because of incidents involving Japan and Manchuria. Not too concerned about the East at this time, because this course is about Europe, but it's just to understand. And Germany's not the last one. There will be others. In any event, as far as the League is concerned, and you know, it will not officially die until 1946, but I think you can say it's on its last leg, even in this, by the mid to late 30s, you know. I mean, they still go on with its activities and charitable activities and helping poverty programs and all that, and that's nice. But I'm just saying, in terms of having any authority in international relations, and that's important because of a place I've already mentioned. It's got 6 letters and 2 syllables, no pressure. It starts with D and it ends with G. Thank you. God, you're good. A, okay. Danzig. League commissioners were there. So that makes you feel good and alert. Sort of like caffeine, huh? Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. Knowing. But it's not to forget we have new friends. And the big red one. Yeah. Yes, they joined in 1934. Not that we want to learn too many dates. But you know, they had been waiting to be asked. You know how hard that is? You know, like at a dance, and you're sitting there by the phone, wanting it to ring. Could you imagine there in Moscow, waiting for that long distance from Geneva, calling and saying, would you join? Well, it's kind of hard when you are leading worldwide revolution and you're denouncing the West. Sometimes not everybody wants you and says, gosh, we would love to hang out with you. No, we wouldn't. We hate you. But we can learn to love you. This is a slow process of learned love. Because during the 1920s, I mean, the Soviet Union, despite their denials, was actually sponsoring the Comintern, a communist international. There were communist parties throughout the world. And those parties were dedicated to worldwide revolution. In other words, they were not into give peace a chance. So we understand that. But the Soviets always said, Comintern, nah, we don't really handle that. That's not part of our. But then Stalin said, let's go full scale. Because I'm thinking he was even getting interested in the German situation, and not in a good way. Concerned. 1934, that's pretty early, isn't it? How would Stalin have already known that there might be issues with Germany? Somehow he was prescient enough to understand that historically, let's face it, Germans and Russians are not necessarily going to be pals. And that we've got to find somebody else to like. Maybe we could find them in Geneva. So, the applying for membership, we got your application, and you know how this goes, it hurts. You know, we appreciate your interest in our program, and please apply next year. Didn't make it this round. Yeah. Send the transcript, 3 letters of recommendation. Wondered who would recommend the Soviet Union. Never mind. Anyway, the idea is that finally in 1934, and it's interesting, the Germans have left the League of Nations. So that's one black ball we don't have to deal with. So then that special delivery letter comes from Geneva to Moscow. Dear friends, we want you. Would you be one of us? And could you imagine just the ecstatic feelings in Moscow? Well, maybe not ecstatic. Let's just say they decided that maybe this would be useful. And who should we think of in that connection but this fellow? What a character. Litvinov. Remember him? Maxim Litvinov is one of these interesting Bolsheviks. And let's just call them what they are. He was a hardcore, but with an English twist. He spent years in England. He married an English woman. Her parents were hardcore Reds. I mean, so it was a nice, proper marriage. I mean, it wasn't like, no, we're sort of, we're Tories, but I still love you. No, they love themselves some Das Kapital. And they date, you know, hang out and read each other from maybe Lenin's greatest hits. It's like that was a true romance. And he became, because of course he was totally bilingual, probably trilingual. Maxim Litvinov became a major symbol of Stalin's efforts for the new, improved Soviet Union. Yes. Yeah, exactly. You think of the Soviet Union as terror and collectivization and slave camps. But no, we want to be one of you. We are the world. We are the children. Give me a hug. You think, wow, Litvinov did all that? Well, I mean, he could talk a good game. And that down there tried to make it a little larger. Collective security, that was his favorite phrase. He got it in every speech at the League of Nations between 34 and 38. And it's like, you Brits, you French, I think I love you. I care a great deal. And they sort of like, not too close, Maxim. Just shake hands. Maybe we'll shake hands and then we probably had enough. Because, I mean, If you were British French, Third Republic, and you thought, how do I feel about Reds? I don't like them here in Paris. In fact, I loathe them here in Paris. So why should I then become their friend? In Geneva, well, that's different. That's international. It's a very, very odd situation. The new relationship that the Stalinist regime is trying to have. And believe me, this is a change for Stalin. But again, I think for Stalin and Litvinov, and you'll notice his years, again, not to lay on too many dates, 1934 to 1938, and then ambassador to the United States between 1941 and 1944. So he had quite an interesting career. And he managed to avoid getting executed by Stalin. Yes! Yeah, he got to die in his bed. Nice! Great thing. I mean, it's amazing. Not many managed that. So it was really tough. Died in 51. So, yeah, because, you know, Stalin can get up and say, hey, Joe, good to see you, man. Comrade, I love you. But, yeah, some people got the axe. But Litvinov played his cards very, very well indeed. And we understand that this Litvinov character represents the new attitude that the Soviets are going to try to have in the Western world. That Comintern, I don't know what they're up to. They've got some wild stuff going on. But you know what? We ought to be together. Let's stay together, in the words of the song. Let's be friends, because we need to fight communists. We need to fight fascists. Fascists are bad. Fascists hate you. Fascists hate me. And that brings us together. Oh, sure, we have differences. You don't like to read Lenin. You don't care. You don't have a Marxist t-shirt. I get that, but we still care deeply about each other. That is the situation. And I tried to imagine the big welcome party in Geneva when the first communists got there, and like everybody said, whoa, yeah. We're sad about Italy and Germany, but we're so excited to have you at the Soviet Union. I don't know, I'll just make that up. But there's something to think about. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time. And thank you for coming.